it's often when someone might say something and we're like, that's not what we said we're here to do. Like, if we need something to help us create guardrails, we might go, well, let's go back to our mission. Is that in there? Maybe that's why we say no.
Got it.
Hello and welcome back to the Leadership Launchpad, where we help technical managers improve themselves, their teams, and their organizations. On this show, I talk with industry leaders, coaches, authors, and experts to give you actionable insights that help improve your own performance and the performance of those around you. Today's show is one of a series that I recorded at the recent Association for Talent Development International Conference. I'm sure the video will look a little bit strange or the audio might not be as clean as normal. I do apologize. This was actually my first time recording out in the wild. Don't worry, I'll do better next time. I learned a lot. Our guest today is Holly Betke. Holly is the Senior Director of Global People Development and Engagement at StockX. She kicked off day one of the conference with an amazing presentation. And so I asked if she could sit down and talk to me about what she presented. In this episode, expect to learn how individual leaders can set a mission and vision for their team, why co-creation of that mission can be so effective, an amazing technique you can use to get honest feedback from your team, and a whole lot more. Before we get into the discussion, I do want to remind you that if this is your first time here, please make sure to subscribe so that you never miss a future episode. And if you're already subscribed, hopefully that means you're liking the content. So I would ask that you please share this show with at least one other person, because that is how we grow. I can't tell you how much it means to me. With that, let's get into the discussion with Holly Betke. Holly, welcome to the Leadership Launchpad. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Absolutely. I'm really excited to have you because we're at ATD right now. I got to see your session. You opened the conference, right? You were the
Sunday morning.
very beginning of it. And it was just so great. I'm really excited to have a chance to kind of talk to you about, about some of the concepts that were in there. One of the first concepts that I really loved was this idea of setting mission and vision for a team rather than a company. Yeah. Can you explain kind of your framework around that, or what you mean by that?
Yeah, I think it's really foundational. So it's helpful to start a brand new team, or a team you're rebuilding, or a team that's been together a long time, and maybe these are things you just haven't done, and it might be a good refreshing, thing to do.
Yep.
But for me, it sets a good foundation of like, what are we here to do?
Yep.
Just like a company, what are we here to do? What is our mission? It also is I really encourage leaders to do this as a collaboration. This is not a leader writing stuff down and telling people.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be anymore. I don't think we live in that environment anymore,
No.
right?
Yeah.
So it's a collaboration because it also gets people thinking like, oh, that's a good question. What am I here to do?
Yeah.
And they also tend to live in their little bubbles. Like, I'm here to design. I'm here to facilitate, when our purpose is really so much more than that. So I think it helps people to understand their connection to the business.
Yeah.
What are we here to do to support the business?
Yeah.
And then vision, I think, is important. The vision tends to be, I also co-create vision, but it tends to be more of the leader's vision, right?
Got it.
Where
it's
do
a little
I
more
want to
aspirational.
take? Where do I want to take this team? But I like them to co-create because I want them to think bigger too.
Yeah.
And of course, they'll think of things I didn't.
Yeah.
So we do it the same way, but I probably have a little more influence over the vision than the mission.
Sure.
Because I also, hopefully as the leader, I do have some vision of where we should go.
Yeah. So vision, a little bit more forward thinking.
Yep.
Still kind of, you're getting input from the team, but it's really like, where do you want it to go?
Yeah.
Then mission is, how are we serving today?
That's right.
How
what
are
we here for?
Yeah, I love it. You work with a lot of software engineers or technology.
I do, yeah. In a tech company.
How does that sit with them? Like, what do these conversations look like when you're talking specifically to that kind of group? Because I think traditionally, they are very focused on the tasks.
Yeah, I will say I do this obviously so I've been an L&D leader for about 23, 24 years. So I do this always, right? Yeah. And then when I get into an organization, I've been at StockX for 5 years, so I'm trying to say here, these are some regular leadership practices that in L&D we do. You guys may want to do it. A lot of times they don't adopt it.
Yeah, sure.
Particularly because I think we're still in this phase of encouraging a learning environment and making it I hope to eventually be working for StockX that considers themselves a learning organization.
Okay.
But we're not there yet.
Sure.
So we don't force it on people.
Of course.
We say, leaders, you might do this. This might be helpful. In fact, that's kind of where this started for StockX. Is I had a leader come to me and say, can you help us with our mission and vision and do a little session?
Yeah.
And I was like, oh yeah, I do this, but I guess I should tell other people that it's a good idea.
Yeah.
So some people have taken us up on it,
Uh-huh.
and some haven't.
Yeah.
And we're sort of at this stage where we're like, we allow the leaders enough autonomy to figure out
Yes.
if that's something they need to do or don't need to do.
That makes sense.
Not something we're forcing on the organization just yet.
Just yet, yeah. Well, it's funny how there can be things that you just kind of do instinctually, and it's just become a habit pattern.
That's right.
It's the the old adage of the fish swimming in water, you don't even realize it.
Yes.
And then what it takes is somebody coming to you and asking, hey, how do you do that?
That's exactly right.
And it forces you to kind of reflect and be like, how do I do this? What is the point of this? So when that happened, and now, okay, you have to go out and teach people, how did that did you have to end up creating kind of a framework for, because I'm imagining like there's a little bit of referencing the company mission and incorporating that and finding so
That's exactly right.
So if you're a new leader wanting to think about doing this in your organization, and I think that's the key thing here, is it's like you don't have to wait for a company to do this. Even if you're a frontline leader, you have 8 people on your team, this can be valuable.
Yep.
How do you start?
Yeah, I mean, it's really easy to pull some of these concepts off the internet, right? I mean,
Sure.
everybody's mission and vision for their organizations are out there.
Yeah.
So the first thing I did was go find examples that were good, and I found examples that were bad.
Okay.
Because we do learn better often from seeing the bad.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
So I went out and just Googled, 30 companies. Like, what is Nike saying? What is Adidas saying? What is New Balance saying? Or I'm taking some of the companies that are younger and fresher and newer, and what are they saying?
Yeah.
And I looked at Google. What is Google saying? And some of these companies that we kind of worship, some of them either don't have good missions or they don't have any, or they're not published, right?
Yeah.
So I used that as just the grounding point to be like, let me give you some examples.
Yep.
Of course, I did the here's what a mission is, here's what a vision is. But that stuff is super simple and basic, right?
Yeah.
The definition of a mission, the definition of a vision. Here's what some people are doing, some companies. Here's what some teams internally to StockX have done. Now go do.
Great.
And I like to also just be like, there's no right or wrong answer necessarily.
Yeah.
Like, of course, there's good and bad missions and visions.
Yeah.
But we don't say come turn it into us and we'll judge it. It's like,
sure.
do this. It should be helpful and grounding for your team. That's the whole point.
Yeah, I'm imagining, because the neat thing that I love about your approach too is that you're letting it be so organic. So you're giving so much autonomy and ownership to the leaders.
Yeah.
And I could see this becoming actually a potentially pretty toxic exercise if it is
Sure.
something where it's like a top down, okay, everybody submit yours and we're gonna say if it's good or bad. That could be
it could be, and then it just becomes one of those check the box activities that nobody likes to do anyway.
Yeah. That being said, though, I think you want the autonomy. I am also imagining there, especially kind of the lower you get in the organization, do you find that it gets more specific? Is there such a thing as kind of overly broad and lofty in a mission or vision?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it can be both too specific and too broad.
Yep.
We want people to find sort of a nice, happy medium.
Yep.
But I actually think the better activity is just that you did it.
Got
Right?
it.
I personally don't get hung up on the details. In fact, when I looked at the one that we did a couple years ago and then we just revised it for my own team, I was like, we wrote that? Oh my gosh. It probably had 7 sentences. It was too big. And we put everything in it. And this year we were like, you can't even memorize that. It's too long. So but that activity in and of itself is grounding for you and your team. So it's fine if it's not perfect.
Yeah. So it's very iterative.
Yes.
And it's kind of the process is the goal.
Yeah.
In many ways.
That's what one of our points in our session was, that it's just doing it is really the first step, which when I looked out at the people who raised their hands that they haven't done it for their own teams, I was like, okay, that's your first order of business. Just go do.
Yeah.
And then if you don't iterate, it is a check the box, and then it doesn't matter. When does it become cliche?
Yeah.
When you're not, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So then you may as well not really bother.
Yeah. I remember it was really powerful. I think this was at a company level. I was working with a company where we reset the mission and vision. And I remember it was really great. After maybe 6 or 12 months, maybe it fell away. But for a while there, when we would have project meetings, we would always start the meetings with that up on the screen of just kind of re-anchoring us of this is where we're going. Okay, now let's dive in.
We actually do that. So we have quarterly business reviews where every area of the business presents what they accomplished in the last quarter and what they're focused on.
That's great.
For the next. It's 3-day long, if you're at the top 2 levels of leadership, you're in these meetings for 3 straight days.
Yeah. And quarterly, quarterly is that's a pace.
It's a pace. And we have been like we're very dedicated
Great.
to it.
That's
It doesn't
awesome.
get pushed back. It doesn't get ignored.
Amazing.
But our team, which I work under we call it PX, People Experience,
Yep.
formerly known as HR.
Yeah.
So under the HR umbrella, when we do our QBRs, we always start with that same thing. We start with like a picture of who the leaders are, because also we just go through a lot of change.
Yeah.
It's like, reminder, here's who
Yeah.
works in PX now.
Yeah.
And then the mission.
Yeah.
Yep.
I love it.
Yeah, it's a good reminder.
Yeah. And then how have you seen this impact folks, like, or impact teams? Does it help you day to day, like keep people motivated?
I think where it helps is when you revisit. Like you're not thinking and talking about it like daily, typically.
Sure.
I think it's more in the revisiting, which can be sparked by something happening in the day, right?
Yeah.
So let's say you revisit twice a year. The revisiting is the moment that you really get a lot of benefit, because you're just sparking all kinds of conversation.
Yeah.
Like we love to do the, electronic sticky notes.
Okay.
And it's just a full-on brainstorm every time, and it's people's creative energy gets going.
Yep.
And it's fun, right? So that's where you get the most benefit. But in between those moments, it's often when someone might say something and we're like, that's not what we said we're here to do. Like if we need something to help us create like guardrails, we might go, well, let's go back to our mission. Is that in there? Maybe that's why we say no.
Got it.
To something, because it's outside of the guardrails we sent, or something's presented to us. I'll give you a good example. So my team was the people development team, right? And we mostly just did training and development activities. And a couple months ago, the thought started coming up that they were going to give us the engagement. They were eliminating the engagement team and giving us that responsibility. And it was more just talk at first, like, hey, would you want to do this? Which of course I was like, absolutely. I was super excited. I always wanted to own engagement. So right off the bat, I was like, absolutely. But then immediately I was like, I wonder if that changes our mission. Does it fit in our mission? And so it just makes me, and it's okay either answer. If we look at the mission and go like, hey, that still works. And Lupe and I just realized that this week while we were here, we're like, remember our old mission that said our old vision. We want to be a team that people come to solve their problems, whether it's training related or not. And I was like, that's literally what happened when they were like, do you want engagement? They were like, we think you can solve this. And so that's when it's those moments of like two things. A, it's like, wow, we did that. B, it's like, now it's time to revise because we got there. So that was kind of cool.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And I think it's such a great example, because how to say no, when to say no is a question that comes up a lot. As you were talking through that, especially about the revisiting or things coming up and getting to say, are we supposed to do that? Something that sparked for me is, at Better Ready Studios, when we're teaching new managers, one of the first things we focus on is trust and building trust. I got to imagine for these conversations to be successful, there needs to be some level of trusting relationship. Like should this be something that a brand new manager can do with their team as a way to build trust, or kind of should you maybe wait a little bit?
I think you can do it brand new because it is so low stakes.
Got it.
Right? So there are other activities that you probably have to wait a little while to do. But a mission and a vision, there's no, people aren't going to die if you don't write it well. And I actually think it's kind of cool to do it really early on. Like if I'm a new leader, in the first couple of weeks, after I'm getting to know people and understand our roles and responsibilities, I'm going to bring people together to say, all right, let's talk about mission vision. And people might be like, well, we don't even know you yet. They might be holding back a little. That's okay. This is an activity that's going to be grounding for us. And instead of revisiting in 6 months, let's revisit in 3, because we're such a new team or whatever. So I think that the stakes are so low because, first of all, a lot of teams don't have it to begin with. So the leader might be establishing it for the very first time. Or it's just giving you that opportunity to have those conversations. So I think it can start to build trust, especially if you need that team. There's an existing team that a leader has walked onto and they're skeptical. Either you're a peer that got promoted or they brought you in from the outside and people are mad. So either way, that starts to just create some conversation around like, what are we doing here? Here's why I think we're here. Do you know why we're here? And are we on the same page?
Well, and that's why I'm sure that co-creation is so important. It's not me coming and saying, look, this is how we're doing. This is what I'm bringing to the team.
That's exactly
the way to get rid of that skepticism and say, hey, what are we doing here as a team?
And it's us together. That's the shift that I've seen, doing this for so long. That's one of the greatest shifts is that, and to me as a leader, it's a burden off my shoulders.
Yeah.
When I get to say, like, this isn't just me. I don't have to go write these things in a bubble and perfect them by myself. We're doing this together. And then, of course, it engages your team.
Yeah, absolutely. That's awesome. I want to make sure we get to one other thing that you brought up in your session, because another thing we focus on a lot is feedback. Getting feedback for leaders is incredibly difficult. I actually I remember one of the first corporate management trainings that I went to, when we were talking about feedback, the question came up of upward feedback, and the trainer just said, don't do it.
Ooh.
Which is, okay.
I know where that comes from, but.
Yes, but let's find a different answer maybe.
Yeah.
But for the managers, from the manager's point of view, getting that, because so often it's seen as like, oh, this is, oh, you're doing great, boss. You know, you're hesitant, but you gave such a great technique to ask for feedback in a way that kind of gets rid of all that stuff. In fact, when Lupe was giving you feedback, you could tell how like he wouldn't have had any feedback to give you. That's really, right. if you hadn't used this technique.
If I had just said, tell me how I'm doing on these 5 things, he would have said, doing great on all of them.
Exactly.
And that would be the end of conversation.
Exactly. So what did you do differently?
So I like to do ranking.
Yeah.
Although I also because we're an L&D team, we're also always asking for feedback at the end of a training, at the end of a conversation.
Yeah.
So we actually, last year, we rolled out a couple of initiatives for the whole organization, which included psychological safety and radical candor.
Yeah.
So I want to come back to those 2 things in a moment.
Okay.
But first, to get more feedback, we try to give people just simple tools, right?
Yeah.
At the end of a presentation, maybe ask your team members. So if you're a leader, you're asking people who report to you, or just people who are in the room that might be under you or above you on the org chart.
Yeah.
Ask anyone, how did that go 0 to 10? So that's how we started. We didn't start with ranking. We were just like, let's give you some easy tools. 0 to 10 is an easy tool. Everybody understands what it means, 10 being best. And then when most people feel really comfortable giving you like an 8 or a 9, you're hardly ever, especially if they're reports to you, going to get 0 through 7.
Yes.
And that's fine.
Yeah.
But if they give you an 8 or a 9, they gave you the door to say, what could I have done to make it a 10?
Yeah.
So there's little opportunity there, and it's pretty comfortable for people, right? Yeah. Now, I like to tell people, if you're always getting 10s, you probably don't have a super psychologically safe environment.
Something's wrong.
They don't feel comfortable telling you even 8 or 9, which is still pretty safe.
Yes.
So something to look into. But that's also still data. If I get all 10s, that's data that tells me, oh, I got some other stuff I got to do.
Yes.
So we started there. And then we also just started trying to add to that toolbox.
Okay.
And one of the things is ranking.
Yeah.
So if you, particularly as a leader, if there's things that you can put on paper, we like to say 3 to 5.
Okay.
So the activity that I just don't think leaders are doing enough, because they're also either afraid of doing it, or they don't have a psychologically safe environment, so they know they're not going to get, honest stuff. But if you force them to rank you, put the concepts on a paper and say, put this in order. What am I best at? What do I need to work on?
Yeah.
Even if their language is like, well, you're good at all of it, which Lupe did.
100%.
In the activity, he kept sort of qualifying it. Like, well, I'd give you a 5 here, but you're still really good at it.
Yeah.
I don't care. Like that language doesn't matter to me. It's 5th, and I know that I should put some effort and energy towards that.
Yeah.
So I think that's the giving people just this really safe way.
Yeah.
You kind of have to push away some of the extras, like the uncomfortableness he was feeling. And we do this all the time, and he was even feeling it, right? Yeah. Just push that aside and pull out from it what's helpful. Yeah. What's helpful is you gave me a 5 in this area, and I frankly agree with you. Yeah. So let me work on that. Yes. And that's just super simple to do. We did it in under like 30 seconds. Exactly. And then those 5 things, those 3 to 5 things, they might change all the time. You might go through a corporate initiative where, like, all of a sudden, for example, last year we started rolling out radical candor. We told people it is imperative that leaders in particular, but everyone should be asking for feedback and getting feedback and accepting it in the right ways. We're going to create a better feedback loop, right? So we're teaching all these concepts of how to do that. That's the perfect time then to go back to my 3 to 5 things and be like, well, if radical candor's not on here, I got to add it. Yeah. Maybe it's your 6th. Yeah. Okay, now I want you to rank me with radical candor thrown in there. Yeah. Now I want you to rank me with psychological safety thrown in there, or whatever that looks like. Yeah. So you can do that activities every month, every one-on-one, however often you want. Yeah. And it doesn't matter, like those things can shift and should shift with the times and with your organization. Yeah, it doesn't need to be a really formalized system of this is part of the performance review or whatever. It can be a really low weight way. Did it on Post-it notes. Exactly. Yeah. Super cheap, easy. And that's ultimately what we need to get back to with feedback. Just like
just like the mission and vision, it's meant to be iterative. The feedback is iterative. None of this is perfect.
Yep.
And I think that's one of the challenges that we in HR, people experiences, always face is where there's almost a worry about experimenting.
Yes.
Because we're so tired, because there are things within our scope that shouldn't be experimented with.
True.
You know,
It's already
pay.
been proven. Yeah,
like
we
pay,
know how to
like,
do
like
this.
we need to pay people.
Yep.
We need their benefits to go
let's
through.
not play with the systems and all of that.
There's things that need to work, but there's so much other stuff where we need to get rid of this stuff and just like, look, this is a work in progress. We're all works in progress.
Especially for those of us that don't work in a hospital, right?
Yes.
I work in, trading sneakers. No one is going to die if we experiment and it doesn't go well.
Yeah. Awesome. I love this conversation, Holly. Thank you so much, because I think there's like just been some really actionable things. It's like that's what I loved about your presentation. It's just like walking out of it. I mean, I immediately was like, I can do that, I can do that, I can do that, and I'm going to be a better leader.
Yeah,
which is
what
people need.
That gives me chills.
Oh, amazing. Well, thank you so much for being here today. Enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thank you. You too.
Yeah. Thank you so much for listening to today's show. If you are looking for help turning your organization's great engineers into great managers, me and my team at Better Everyday Studios would love to help. We deliver targeted and interactive training workshops that are designed to help build the 3 fundamental skills of any new manager: building trust, giving feedback, and setting goals. Reach out to me through matt@bettereverydaystudios.com so we can start making your organization better every day.